So let's talk about why upgrade. I didn't have a slide for that. I just wanted to have a kind of a discussion here. We'll talk a little bit about some of our favorite features and versions in a few slides, but I'm just curious, team, what are some reasons, while I sip some drink here, it's just water. It's clear liquid. Well, what are some reasons that you would have to upgrade? And we have these conversations with clients all the time. And in fact, we have quite a few clients who are maybe behind on upgrades, because sometimes because of vendor, sometimes because of myths. So unmute and talk if you have things to discuss about why we should be upgrading.
Well, my first thing would be security. Yep. Is the main focus. The patches for SQL Server go out of date in 10 years. So currently SQL Server 2012 and earlier doesn't have any support for security unless you've spent a lot of money for it. And then just mainstream, bug fixes go away after 5 years, I believe. So 2017 is now out of support.
Yeah, they do kind of an N-1, I think. So we had a client with some AG issues on 2016, even when it was still sort of in support, but basically Microsoft's answer was, well, hey, this is not a problem in 2017, and we're not going to really prioritize a fix on that. So why don't you get with the program? Good point.
Yeah, to piggyback on what David said, on security, there's numerous security features in newer versions of SQL Server, like the transparent data encryption, which you may or may not be required to based on your organization's requirements for compliance. There's always encrypted. There are other features, like David said, that are coming out with patching and whatnot that don't exist because they're not supported in the older versions.
Sure.
And that can be really problematic when you're talking with a client who still has SQL Server 2008. And they haven't even gotten up to a version where you can implement some of these features.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about availability groups when it's not even there yet.
Right.
Or features the vendors need and all that. Yeah. Anybody else have any kind of thoughts on? I think you've hit the big ones. Security, compliance are huge, but looks like Jack might be going to unmute. I can't tell. Go ahead.
I'm unmuted now again. For me, and I think Tara would agree with this, if you're not on 2016 yet, having query store available is a huge reason to upgrade.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, the performance features. I mean, just DMVs have changed. So absolutely. A lot more HADR options too, I would say, that are out there. And they just work, right? Things are buggy in V1 and some bugs are fixed in hot fixes and CUs and service packs, back when they had service packs. Some bugs are just fixed in the next version. But not critical bugs typically, but buggier or rustier things get fixed instead of, they get redone or fixed. Yeah, it makes sense. So, and Bill, some of your thoughts on why? Why to upgrade? I think we hit most of them. And if you have any in the
I'll throw this in. This isn't directly related to SQL Server, but hardware going out of maintenance, getting old. And if you're upgrading the hardware, you might as well upgrade SQL.
Absolutely. That's a huge one. For people who are still buying hardware, it's a huge one. And just because you're on virtual doesn't mean you don't have hardware. There's virtualization support. There's Windows support. Let's not forget about that. I mean, we have so many people running old versions of Windows which are out of support, and there are security flaws in those and exploits that are out there. So, we talked about security and ransomware a few months ago in a webinar topic, or maybe over the summer, and some of the things we do for security and for best practices are protective things. They help your environment so that they need to be done. But I would say another reason to do them, if that's not enough, do you want to have to explain to the CEO, the CIO, the shareholders why you are running on this version that had these known issues? Let that scare you into it. It's a testament that SQL Server 2008 still runs on people's production environments. Like that's pretty cool that they built a product that could be 15, 14 years old that still works. but this is not like driving your car 472,000 miles just because you can. You want to put the picture on Facebook someday, or wherever people are posting pictures these days. You should not wear that as a badge of honor. You should upgrade. So if you were to upgrade, this is the general approach we follow. And team, if I'm missing something here, let me know. But our approach is pretty simple, and this is with some degrees of variance. We tend to always start with a health check and inventory. And you might say, why do a health check? So if somebody called me up right now on a sales call and said, hey, can you help us do an upgrade? I would suggest we start with a health check. And we do that with existing clients too. Although existing clients, we kind of watch their environments and sort of check their health as we go. But for the health check, we want to know what sins do you currently have and what band-aids do you have to overcome those sins so we can build your new environment sort of sin-free, if you will, for the few moments before your users are in there. It'll be a pristine environment. And we just want to make sure that we send you the right hardware, because a lot of people have thrown hardware at problems over the years, and maybe they have all these worst practice settings. They have no indexing. They have no performance. Their queries are running really bad. They never update statistics, and they don't need 2 of the cores they bought. They can get rid of 2 cores. They can get rid of some of their memory because they just have their brakes on by not having proper settings. Also, during that health check, we would do an inventory. We suggest you do the same thing. You can run a report from the SQL Server installer team. I feel like an old CEO here, not the SQL Server MVP, Mike. I'm sure there's a better way to do it, but I would just run the installer and get the installed features report. Is there actually a way to do that through query or PowerShell?
Not as easily as it is with that report.
All right, good.
There is a DBA tools command to run, but it essentially just runs the installer and gets the report and returns it to you in PowerShell. So
I would probably just use the GUI because that's who I am. I like PowerShell. I'm not as good at it as some of the other folks on the team here. All the DBA tools is so easy. But yeah, run the installed features report or use that DBA tools command and see what features you have. And if you really want to get extra credit, look and see which features you actually use. Because a lot of people, when they install SQL Server, if they're not a DBA, they press next, they check a bunch of boxes, every box sometimes. They click next, finish, and poof, you have a SQL Server. Congratulations. And you have analysis services, reporting services, integration services, R, it depends on whatever version you have all this stuff, and you may or may not be using it. And we would prefer you to only install what you need on the new server. It lowers surface area for attacks. It lowers surface area for bugs. It lowers surface area for headaches during migration. And it's just one less thing for you to worry about. And you can always, trying to think, I want to make sure I'm not speaking out of turn here. I would say 99.99% of the features that you would want, you could install after migration, after upgrade, or after installation. I mean, I can't even think of one feature that you would be really in trouble for not installing at install time. RS, IS, nothing. You can install it all after the fact. Might require a restart depending on the feature and all that. So you want to get that inventory. What do you have? What do you need? And you want to look at all the things you're using in SQL Server. We actually, David has a post that has some stuff to consider, and one of the posts that we will have coming out will be sort of some of the things we look at. But actually, I'll tell you the best thing to do. If you go to DBA tools in PowerShell and you look at start DBA migration, we'll talk about that in a few slides. I'll let Jeff talk about that more than me, or Jeff Sandra, or Jack, whoever. But I'm not a fan of doing start DBA migration, but I am a fan of seeing what commands that tool calls. And commands may be the wrong word, but I'm going to use it anyway. What that tool calls, and then say, what about proxies? What about encryption certificates? All the things that you might forget about until after migration. Oh yeah, I didn't bring the link servers over. That's why there's problems. You can use that as sort of your inventory builder. Then we like to plan the new environment. And you'll notice I keep saying new, and I even put it in bold italics and point 3 here, but we plan the new environment based on what your current environment is, what your performance characteristics are. So part of the health check would be doing some performance analysis, build your new environment side by side with the right version, and do some test migrations. Our goal here is we want to have all of the hard work done during the day. Most people are at their best during the day. Some people are insomniacs and they're better at night, but most people are at their best during the day. There's less stress. We're not under the gun to get the release done. So I want to try and do all the setup, all the building, all the test migrations during the day, and do log shipping the way we'll do. We'll talk about that in other slides too, but do your actual log shipping. Do the exact same process you're going to do for production. Yeah, that means you're going to have to break log shipping and set it back up again. It's not the end of the world. It's pretty easy. We'll talk about that when we get to that slide. But do the same steps you'll do, and then run through the migration and see how it worked. And you'll know pretty quickly where your kinks and flaws are. And now when you go to the live migration, you'll have already done it. So that night of cutover, which typically is on a night, can be a weekend day, depending on your environment, is much less stressful. In fact, my goal is to have our team on a call be pretty bored. Like we're just there as an insurance policy, and we can kind of be the calm voice of reason while everybody else panics. And hopefully they're not. Hopefully we've inspired them not to by doing the same thing when they're testing of apps and all. But we want the database piece to be very simple. And then we want to do our smoke test. And once the smoke test comes back, and once we confirm things are right, then actually open up the test to the users. And one thing that we should have ahead of time is we should have a proper go, no go sort of setting or criteria defined ahead of time. I'm not sure if anybody here on video has been in companies before where you might have had go, no go meetings, but they were really just go meetings. It was like a thing they would do just to sort of look like they're doing the right thing, but any objections raised were sort of like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. We have to get this done because Bill and this and Susie and that and all these people who are over you are insisting it gets done. So because all the C levels want it done, it has to get done immediately. But try and define success criteria. So when we see this, we'll do this. Do your smoke test. Once that's good, then open it up to the users. Up until the open to the users, you are clear to just roll back. And because we're doing a log shipping migration, which we'll talk about in a couple of slides, all you have to do is point your CNAMEs, point your connections back to the old server and say, well, I don't know what happened. We're going to regroup and do this next week. Once your users are in, now it's hard because once they've written data, it's hard. And then I like to keep the old server up. We don't have a straight path policy on that, I don't think, but I like to keep the old server up as long as the hardware people will let us, a couple of weeks, so we can sort of keep that server online, the database is offline or in recovery, and see bad connections, because invariably there's some app under somebody's desk, someplace in the building or connected remotely that is connecting to the old server, and you won't know about it until you do a migration and that person stops working. And then they get mad. And you can find it before they call you, and you can see their IP address, do a NS lookup and find out what server it is, and then deal with the problem and hope it's a minor one. And then celebrate, but wait 2 weeks to celebrate. 2 weeks, if you're doing crazy month-end processes or quarter-end processes, maybe 2 weeks plus a month-end or a quarter-end, then celebrate once you're good. Did I miss anything on the approach that at a high level? No? Okay.